There's the video of the Vice President, J.D. Vance, boarding Air Force Two, heading for Islamabad, Pakistan for high-stakes talks with Iran. High stakes, he said. Can they create an agreement that will end the war once and for all?
For the negotiation, I think it's going to be positive. We'll, of course, see. As the President of the United States said, if the Iranians are willing to negotiate in good faith, we're certainly willing to extend the open hand. If they're going to try to play us, then they're going to find that the negotiating team is not that receptive. So we're going to try to have a positive negotiation. The President has gave us some pretty clear guidelines, and we're going to see. So I hope you guys have a safe flight. We'll certainly take some questions later on. But for now, let's get on the plane and hit the road.
So now, fragile ceasefire, that key waterway has become what Iran sees as its biggest bargaining chip. It's still choking off the movement of many ships, deciding which ones can and cannot flow freely.
Overnight, President Trump posted on Truth Social saying Iran is doing a very poor job, dishonorable, some would say, of allowing oil to go through the Strait of Hormuz. That is not the agreement we have.
So meanwhile, Dana, another potential stumbling block is the conflict ongoing in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Israel continues to hit Hezbollah, Iran's largest and to date most powerful proxy. That regime insisting that any move to exclude this from the ceasefire talk
says that the president gave them clear guidelines. We understand that to mean that the U.S. needs to go in there and tell Iran no enrichment, period. That is what we have heard from White House officials. Remember, about 6 weeks ago, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were sitting there with the Iranians and said, the U.S. will give you all the uranium you want for peaceful purposes. You just can't use it to enrich a bomb. And Iran said, no. Now they are, of course, adding J.D. Vance to the equation. And so we'll see how things go. We don't even really know what the format is yet. They had indirect talks last time. These will be TBD.
Strikes against Hezbollah directly to the negotiations this week in Islamabad. And so there are three really major issues we're looking at here. That's Iran's support of regional proxies and whether or not they're going to tie the success and outcome of these negotiations to support of Hezbollah. We're also looking at the Strait of Hormuz, where since the ceasefire began, anywhere from 8 to 11 vessels have been able to pass through. And Israeli intelligence officials tell Fox News the Iranians are demanding fees of those vessels that are making it through this critical waterway. And then finally, you have this issue of enriched uranium. Despite the fact that earlier this week, President Trump said there was an agreement to go into Iranian territory in the future and dig up that enriched uranium that was buried in the aftermath of Operation Midnight Hammer and then remove it from the country. Iran's nuclear chief this week said they will maintain the right to enrich uranium. And so a lot of points to work out here at the negotiating table. And the question here is whether or not the Iranians are willing to make a good faith deal. The fact that during this conflict, you had the Lebanese prime minister call on Hezbollah to lay down their arms and stop firing toward Israel is something unheard of. Had we told you this 2 years ago, people would have laughed because there was such a connection and Hezbollah was deeply embedded into the Lebanese government. The reality is the president's been able to change the focus of the Middle East from eternal conflict to trying to find some mediation efforts toward a broader ceasefire deal that doesn't just affect the situation inside Gaza between Israel and Hamas and doesn't just affect the situation in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah, but a broader plan for the region that would allow things here to stabilize. And again, this is part of the reason that Operation Epic Fury began. The president was very clear. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, despite the fact that they initially came to the negotiating table and said they had enough enriched uranium for 11 nuclear bombs. And so one of the largest hurdles in the region was considered the IRGC and the threat that the regime posed. And now that that has been largely degraded in the aftermath of these U.S. and Israeli strikes, it opens up a possibility for the Middle East where you could start to see more negotiation taking place and normalization deals across the board that would bring in countries like Lebanon to try and make peace with Israel.